Someone crashed or shot off a firework outside. Okay, I'm Brandon, Firework Boom, and I am streaming on TikTok and YouTube live right now, so I won't have to download the TikTok video and repost it, but we're gonna do a channel timeless reading today, channel timeless collective reading, as well as probably a full channel mode session. So if you see me looking over here, people on YouTube, I'm talking to TikTok. TikTok, if you see me looking over here, I'm talking to YouTube, just so you know what's going on with everything. Great to catch a Sunday live. Great to see you here, Britt. I'm glad you're here. Good to see you again. Looks like you've been in the sun. I have. I have been spending a lot more time outside since it's gotten sunnier out, which is awesome. It's just been like really nice being outside. I know that sounds silly because it's pretty obvious and everyone likes to go outside, but even just like energetically, it's felt like there's been something different about it for me that either I just haven't picked up on before or I don't know, maybe just more recently, that's what my body would like and what I would like. So I've just been noticing a big shift when I just go outside and breathe the fresh air. Been binge watching videos on YouTube. Hey, that's awesome. I really appreciate that. Totally, Jack. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. So we are going to start the reading here. So I do have some channel messages that came through ahead of time. I'll be reading through it. Just have it on like a post-it note down here. But I'm also going to be flowing with the channel messages coming through from my spirit guides, angels, and source, of course, and just flowing with what my intuition is bringing through for the highest good. And of course, it's meant to be what would be for your highest good, what you need to hear, what would help you out the most, and anything else that would be for your highest good, I suppose. Not a fan of winter for that reason. Yeah, I hear you, Deb. I definitely tend to stay inside a lot myself, but then when I do go outside, I'm like, "Oh, this is so nice. Why don't I do this more?" Um, so I hear you. Okay, they're like, "Okay, start." So the angels are like, "Okay, start." So let's start. What would be highest must to come through first? They would like me to read from what came through ahead of time, of course. So this is actually an important message, is what they're saying, which is the whirlwind is settling down, like a collective whirlwind. And that's like if things have been going wrong, is what I'm hearing as clarification. If you've been worried about a lot of things, if a lot has been shifting, and there have been a lot of downloads and like upgrades happening for a lot of this crowd of late is something I'm getting as well. It is timeless, but if you're here live, it'll apply to you either way. So that's part of what that's referring to. What I keep getting for these messages each week, for some reason, is that there is a lot more ease coming in. That's what I'm hearing regarding this, at least. So you're going to find a lot of the downloads that you've been getting locked in and ready to go, if that's been you and you've been noticing that. And sometimes, like when you're getting the downloads, you're just laid out or you're just like tired and need to rest more, or you just notice a lot shifting, or you feel weird or kind of funky, but it's not like a bad funky. It's just like you feel kind of weird. And those are some of the signs of that, when that happens. And it's not the hard and fast rule. It can show up in different ways, or it can also just show up with a lot more I'm gonna say it in a weird way, a lot more less funk, but a lot more ease, or like I don't want you to lock it in where like that's the only way it has to show up, and then just that's why I'm saying all that. So anything else in the whirlwind settling down here? You know, in this next week, from whenever you're seeing this, collective whirlwinds are really going to be fading down, and it's going to be replaced with direction for many of you. For others of you, if it's not replaced with direction, and by direction, it's like you land, you know where you're going, you go, or you at least have some sense or idea of where you're going, is what I'm hearing, or more of one if you already had one. For others of you here, after the whirlwind is actually going to be more healing. So if you don't have a sense of direction, some of you might have more rest and like recovery, but then you're going to know what to do. So what I'm hearing is like in the next 2 weeks to month, or maybe month and 2 weeks, you're gonna be knowing more of what to be doing regarding everything, which is great here. So there is clarity on the way on the other side of the whirlwinds dying down and settling down. They keep showing me rainbows with these, but they're showing me a rainbow for this as well. So let me see what's up with the rainbow fully for that skin for you guys here. So they're showing the message of ease is showing up again. I'm not sure why they're hammering ease so hard for this crowd every week. It's really interesting, but I'm just gonna trust the messages coming through because otherwise, what am I doing? Like, I'm not just gonna pull stuff out of my butt here. But they also showed this like rainbow, but there's like a wreath at the top. There's also like a leprechaun on top, which is interesting. Well, there's a pot of gold. We'll talk about that. But also, like, they showed this. It was something like you walking through or under the rainbow, almost like it was a doorway, so to speak, for the highest good. So let me see what the message is with all this and all the symbolism popping up here in the intuitive visuals. All the visuals I'm getting intuitively, excuse me. Hmm. So Leprechaun is saying like, "Hey, good luck is on the way." So I guess that's just one of the general messages they'd like to hand your way. There's also a message about wealth. But it's like they're showing the pot of gold, and before I get to the explanation of this message, don't freak out because it might not be what you think it is right away. We'll see what comes through, but they're showing the pot of gold and people's like hands reaching into the pot of gold and like taking wealth. And it's about wealth being taken from you is like what they're showing me and I'm hearing, but give me 1 second to get like what the actual message is. So if you feel like wealth has been taken from you in any way, shape, or form, like it is going to be given back to you, perhaps in a different way. It doesn't have to be the same way it was taken or by the same like person, or like it could even be like you lost a job, for example, and someone else offers you a job is like a simple way it could show up. It could literally be something like someone stole from you, but the universe is going to pay you back like times 10 or times 5 or something like that. So, and sometimes when we lose money, we again, like, we think, "Oh, this person has to pay me back," or, "How am I gonna bring them to justice?" or things like that, and they're kinda saying, like, "Hey, let the universe handle that." Again, like, the universe will repay you in a different way, like, maybe a friend gives you money, or maybe your mom, for example, asks you to, like, babysit their cat and pays you, like, 100 extra dollars that, you weren't expecting or something like things like that, to recoup that money, or it might come from a myriad of different angles or locations. Just don't discount the different ways the universe works to, I guess, pay you back is the way I'm hearing it. For others of you regarding this wealth being taken here, I'm just hearing like, hey, the universe is going to pay you back with interest. Don't worry about it. It might not be right away, but it's going to happen. And for most of you, it's soon, is what I'm hearing, which is really interesting. So I'm wondering who's had wealth stolen from them in some way, shape, or form. But it doesn't sound like you need to worry about it too much, which is why I was telling you, like, hey, don't freak out before we get to like what this means. The other thing, like, they're giving me the word portal. And it reminds me of like the Four of Wands tarot card, where some people read the Four of Wands tarot card. Thanks for the hands hearts, by the way. Um, Angel Gates. Speaking of gates, gateway, with the Four of Wands, I guess you could say, but a lot of people or some people read the Four of Wands as like, hey, like they've crossed a finish line, or it's like stepping through, because I think there's like a banister over it, and people will step through it, like a gateway, a portal, or a finish line. I guess you could say that someone's crossing here, and we this came through last week. One of the messages is about heading up into another dimension, but it's also about things changing really quickly at like breakneck speeds that maybe you're not expecting. It could be a direction change is one thing I'm getting, where it's like you just take a 90-degree turn with your path. It could be like you're hanging out with a group of people or something like that, and then you just like Spears like, no, you got to go somewhere else, and you just like ditch them, or something like that. Which I know that might bring up some interesting. What's the best way to speak to this? Don't take that as like a bad thing or as like, oh, you're abandoning people. It could probably be like there's a reason for it. Like that's for the highest good that you would do this, or for your highest good. It's like maybe they're all doing illicit substances, or maybe they all have been talking ill about you, or just like, I'm not saying that's happening. It's just examples of like, so you don't take it the wrong way when I say like, oh, you're ditching people. Mm, but there are these sudden changes as part of this portal message that are coming in for all of you. And it's going to be take different shapes and forms for each of you. But that's also tying into the collective whirlwind energy that we're talking about at the beginning that's fading away. Um, it's like after the it might sound you might think that like during the whirlwind would come the shift, but what I'm hearing for this is after the whirlwind will come the shifts or the shifts or things like that. So be on the lookout out for that happening, or just like receive it when it happens and be like, okay, cool, where's this headed? Or what's the best way this could turn out? Or, put a positive intention into it or something like that. When you notice that happening, and just trust that source is leading you in the best directions if you have to make a sudden change. So as far as like the finish lines way of that they'd like to talk about finish lines as well. Many of you have crossed finish lines already. Some of you don't realize it because it's been more etheric. Like you've hit this growth point where everything shifts and you have to go in this new direction, or I hesitate to use the word lessons, and they're like, get into it. Cause I was about to be like, oh, do we get into this conversation about lessons or not? Because those of you who've been hanging out with me live here for a bit, you've probably heard me talk about it too. Mm, Sorry, sometimes I look at chat and I get distracted and I like pause. But let me get back to so finish lines, cross finish lines with here. Okay, growth point, doing something new. Where were we? Okay, yeah. Like, you've learned a certain thing you needed to learn or saw something you needed to see in order to like shift, and like you cross the finish line with like again, like a group of people, for example, and then you learn this thing about this person, and then you take that learning forward and that awareness forward, and you'll make different choices or better choices about a group of people that you hang out with in the future. And it could be something that's necessary for your path. So, and we'll talk about lessons in a second. For example, what's the best? Well, let me see what the example the angels and source would like to give me for you guys here. Mm, what's the example, guys? Let's say, why am I going blank on this one? Hopefully, you already get it and kind of understand, but maybe you're like, this is going to be silly. You're allergic to lollipops. And then, like, you're just people keep handing you lollipops even though they know you're allergic or something, and then you learn you're allergic, and so that's going to shift things because then you're not making that choice to have lollipops you're allergic to anymore, and you're going to feel a lot better. But then you learn a lot about those people, and so in the future you just learn what is it like when there's energies of people who would do that, to you, and then like you avoid that group or things like that. And you take that learning forward and make a better choice. And then when it's time to join up with the right group, maybe you're starting a business, you're trying to bring business partners on. When it's a lot more important that you choose the right people, then you have that wisdom and that learning or awareness to go off of. Maybe not the perfect way to describe this story. So I apologize if that wasn't the best story, but let me see where else they were going with this. The thing with like lessons is I'll make this brief. But and if you've heard me talk about this, I hope you enjoy this other time of me talking about this. I was sitting one time, I was just like, there was this kind of period of time, like a week or so. And during that period of time, I would find it helpful to literally just sit there, not like doing anything, not even like trying to meditate or anything, but just like sit. And like just different things would come up and different things would enter my awareness and all that stuff. And one of the things that came up was this idea that it's all about lessons, and you're here for lessons, and you're here to go through tough lessons. And if you don't agree to that, then you don't get it, and you're wrong, and you just don't understand what life's about, which isn't true, by the way. And I was sitting with that concept and things I'd heard people say. And as I sat with it and got the energy of it, because I mean, that all just came up with it. I wasn't like trying to, it was just happened. And then I was like, my claircognizance went off and was like, "Oh, that's actually kinda low vibe." We're like and then it's like the thoughts that I don't know how to describe it, but that's the intuition I got. And then my spirit guides are part of it, and my spirit guides interjected and they were like, "Well, no, it is low vibe." So I need to clarify. Got the intuitive message or claircognizant knowing it was lower vibrational, and then I was thinking, "Oh, that's kinda low vibe." And then my guides came in and like, "Well, it is low vibe, not just kinda low vibe." So, I was like, "Oh, super interesting." So, it turns out, according to what I've been getting, that the point of life is not lessons. So what is the point of life about? It might I'll tell you some of the things I've kind of gotten, but it might be better for you to go on your own journey and ask the universe to show you and ask your spirit guides to show you and ask the angels to show you and see what comes to you from the universe. Because it could also be different for each of you, you know, as far as like if there's like a soul mission you're on, for example, or something you're things you're supposed to do here. Um, and sometimes it can be what I'm hearing is like it can be a little bit more amorphous and not as grounded in as you think. Like, for example, if you have a mission to heal the world, it's not like you always have the physical way that's going to work or look right away. But as your life progresses and your soul, what I'm hearing is like soul blueprint activates more, or that information comes in, or it becomes time to spark that. Depending on where you're at, the timing could be a little bit different too, is like when it comes in. But um, you'll kind of just be led to that path in the way it's supposed to look at that time, perhaps also taking into account how things are in the world at that time as well. So, some of you, yes, you do have like physical things you're predestined to do in addition to whatever you're choosing with free will, I suppose you could say. And at the same time, try not to lock it in as that like it has to look like this, especially if you're not sure, is or you haven't gotten that clear message or anything like that. Let it be a little bit loose. Let the angels work. It's all going to come together at the right time, is the way they're kind of saying it right now. So, um, one of the things I'm gonna be really straightforward with you and also say this isn't gonna be the whole thing, and this is just like the start of like an awareness, and it's not the whole big picture. But I did read somewhere like, oh well, what if the purpose of life is to have fun? And that felt a lot lighter to me than like the life is about lessons. So I'm not saying the only purpose ever of life is to just have fun. At the same time, like, does that feel true to you intuitively, energetically? Does that lighten you up? Does that go like, oh, and doesn't that feel a lot better than, you're here to go through tough things and lessons all the time? And, like, what can you create if you're coming from a different perspective, I guess? Or, of course, following your intuition with all this as well. If you're coming from, like, well, what is for the highest good? What is light to me? What is true to me? Instead of buying, like, oh, I need to suffer, if that makes sense. So, what if part of the purpose of life is to enjoy your life or to have fun? And of course, there might be more to it. Don't lock that in as the only thing, but maybe consider it and see what feels true to you. As you I feel like I'm here to help the collective. And I get that's true. And like, don't discount those things in addition to anything else that's coming through here. Like, don't discount yourself or your intuition or what you're feeling. I'm not here to like override that. Does that make sense? I'm here to help you is my intention, not to make you go against your intuition or anything like that. But hopefully that just perspective is helpful in some way. At least I would consider, what if it's not about having lessons, and what if that's not what you came here for? Because to me that's what I was getting. Anyways, that went down a rabbit hole I wasn't expecting to go down, but let's go back here to where they'd like to go. Next thing they're showing me is like a red velvet suit and like like the person pulling a rabbit out of the hat or something like that. There's like that happening, like a magic hat or something like that, and a wand. They are also briefly showing me the sorting hat from Harry Potter. So let me see what the message is for you guys with that showing up here. Meow, 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 meow. I love to meow, by the way. I love to sing my meows. But anyways, back to the magic. So one thing I'm getting is like the universe is going to be pulling out a lot of the stops, perhaps, or pulling a lot out, maybe even out of nowhere to show you more of what's true and what's true for you and like what you need to see, even like about people or especially about people right now. So like don't discount the like little signs, the intuitions, the awarenesses you're getting about people, especially people like I'm getting you're getting the accurate information and to like really trust how ways I'm hearing is weird, like how the universe is pulling out all the stops to show you things. It's like you need the truth is what I'm getting if you're noticing that. So you're gonna notice a lot of magic to show you the truth. Even like things out of nowhere or thin air, like someone like out of thin air, like you're in a conversation, they just like bleh, spill out this like truth. And you're like, oh my God, where did that come from? Or something like that. Or I would also be really paying attention to signs from the universe through other people. So, for example, if you're like phoning a friend and they're just like, "Hey, you should do this." And they're like, "I don't know where that came from. I just felt compelled to tell you that." Or, "I don't know where that came from. It just came out of my mouth." And you're like, "Oh, like that could be the universe working through them to get you a message, or even like your soul spurring them to tell you what you need to hear." But I'd be paying attention to like all the signs through other people as well, not just through like uh signs in other ways that signs can show up from the universe, of course, I guess I could say. So anything else that would be that's good for me to get to before we move on here? So nope. So let's just go to the next item that came through ahead of time and we'll go back. So one of the short, just really quick messages that came through is like obstacles are being removed. Pretty simple on that one. That's happening after this whirlwind is dying down. You know, whatever the whirlwind represents for you right now is something I'm getting. So try not to worry too much if you are running into obstacles or stumbling blocks, or if you like start a project and it just like peters out and like the energy for it is just like gone. Like, one, that could be redirection. Two, it could just be like that's not the right time to work on that. You'll have to trust your intuition on this as well. It's not, like, bad if there are obstacles, like, you could ask, like, "What is this trying to tell me?" Is one thing I'm hearing regarding it. I would almost, like, kinda trust the obstacles, but know that the timing's right for them to be removed pretty soon here, in the next week or so for most of you here is what I'm getting, and, like, try not to worry if you run into them from now on, because like, they're just either trying to tell you something, tell you ti now is not the right time, or they're telling you go a different direction, and if you pay attention, you might find the obstacles have a different energy to them when they show up, or, like, synchronicity to them, which will tell you which one they are, or you might get the channel message or intuitive message, and if it doesn't show up that way, that's okay, that's, like, perhaps a way you can start to discern if you're, like, know you're energy sensitive, but you're kinda newer to it, is, like, just paying attention to the energetic flavor of things and how things pan out and kinda learning some of the language. That's one way you could kinda learn that language of, like, how the universe is working through things is, like, what's the energy underneath the events? Because you'll find the universe running through everything and energetically speaking through everything, and yes, you can channel and hear the universe just, clairaudiently as well with words and, like, direct messages like that too. Um, there's, like, the story they would like me to tell you of, like, one time I worked in Whole Foods, actually, and there would be this thing where if something happened, like, let's say I was breaking down a pallet of product, I guess, to, like, put on the shelves or something, and I was, like, thinking this thoughts over and over again, like, especially if it was more like an angry thought or just they were trying to be like, "Stop," or the universe was like, "Stop," like, this pallet or stack would, like, fall over and, like, fall everywhere, and it was, you know but, like, the thing was, like, there would be an energy to it where the universe would be like, "Hey, cut it out," would be, like, the energy along with it, like, it was almost like a personality of the universe. I hesitate to use that word because I feel like personality is a weird word because it's like, what is a personality? But it was almost like the events had an energy underneath them that had communication along with it, is, I guess, a way I could try to describe it. For those of you who need to hear that as a way of reading the signs showing up or synchronicities, and you can learn a lot through that because then you'll notice, like, synchronicities have a particular energy to them, or if it's, like, the universe speaking through a person, delivering a message, even if it's just, like, a conversation you're overhearing, it will have a particular flavor of energy to it, or texture of energy, however you feel it or perceive it, that'll be like, "Hey, this is a sign, pay attention," and you'll kinda start to learn how you work with all that way, for anyone who needs that. But it's interesting, I don't think I've talked a lot about that, like, energy running through everything and, like, the synchronicities that way too much. However, it's something I've noticed, and you can really learn a lot that way if you're paying attention to that and just the energetic flavor of anything. And maybe most of you can't help it because 'cause you're so sensitive, or at least a lot of you. Maybe 60% or so. Um, or maybe not, so obstacles being removed. Next thing they'd like to get to here, where would we like to go now? They're showing me this, like, red lollipop here. I know we just talked about lollipops as far as, like, the silly example of being allergic to lollipops here. Um, if you feel like you've been failing a lot or not making a lot of headway, you're, excuse me, actually right on track. You're not failing. You're like, this is going to sound very common actually now that's coming out of my mouth, but you're gaining the experience you need to succeed is the way I'm hearing it. So try not to think of yourself as a failure or that you suck or anything like that. It's like, if people are learning guitar, like everyone sucks on guitar when you start learning guitar for the most part. And sure, like you might have someone who's just naturally gifted and they pick up on techniques faster, but they're probably still going to take a while, at least a few months, depending on the style of guitar too. But if you're like trying to shred on guitar, it'll probably take you like at least a year or two uh, to really get great at shredding on guitar. Probably longer if you're trying to get like really top level. And like if you're just learning chords, like maybe that'll be a few months, or maybe that will be still a year because it's just the muscle memory is really interesting, with all that. So especially if you're just starting something new, like try not to beat up on yourself. Or if you started a business for the first time and it like didn't do well, it's like, okay, what experience did you gain? How is this preparing you for the future? Like life's not over is the way I'm hearing it. So try not to think you suck and then not do anything. It's not true. If you need to hear that. Next thing they're showing me is a puzzle actually, but it's like not like they're giving me the word puzzle. It's not anything like too many puzzles I've ever seen, and it's really not something I think I could describe very well. So let me see what the message is. So you're actually at a place where a lot of puzzles are going to solve themselves for you in your world or life. You're not trapped with everything being a puzzle, or if there are certain areas that see, there's a train horn outside. Thanks, train. Synchronistic train. We're on the synchronicity train now. Can I get a toot toot? Not the fart. Unless you have to fart, that's okay, let it out. I can't smell it. Well, actually, in like a sense, like a clear way, I can smell things like that. So, but I probably won't tune into it and smell your farts. So don't worry, don't worry. But if you've ever had that happen, it's really interesting. If someone like lights incense on like a Zoom call and then like you smell the smoke or the patchouli, you're like, oh, what? Like I didn't. Someone told me about that years ago, and then I had that experience pretty soon after. I'm like, oh my god, that's wild. So in case you didn't realize that was a thing that can happen, that can happen. So I I lost my where we were going sort of with the toot toot and the joke, but perhaps you got what you needed to hear anyways. I'm gonna ask them to circle back to it if it's important, or I'll just sit with it for a second, and if it doesn't come through, I'll move to something else. I'll just move on. If it comes back to me, then we'll get to it. Okay. So one of the things that also came through was grasshopper, of course, and there was a period of time where grasshopper was a very common like spirit animal and like sign that showed up for these readings. The message that came through with it was just a lot of leaps. So obviously, like what I'm hearing is there are a lot of leaps right now, or like leaps of faith, leaping away from things. There's something that came through in the channeled advice on the week ahead. So this will be more for people who are seeing this live or soon after it's available for rewatch on YouTube. But there's this message that came through for this week ahead as part of channel advice on the week ahead. I was like, if you're guided to like leap away from things, like really trust that like the universe is going to be showing you things like, hey, you need to leap away from this potentially for many people right now, especially this crowd or the people who show up for the newsletter. It's a free newsletter, by the way. If someone was wondering if it was free or not, it is, and it's on my website if you're interested. But no pressure on that. Just if you're called to trust your intuition on that. Uh, but that's happening, and they're just like leaps of faith in general. They're also, I mean, this is a different angle or message, but they're giving me the words or phrase logic leap as well. There are, you might have to like forego logic and trust your intuition on certain things here. And I know that's difficult to do if you're newer to doing that. If you're a veteran or you work with your intuition a lot or your channel guidance a lot, you already know what I'm talking about, where it's like you've probably already had the experiences where you've learned, like, oh, even though my logical mind said we should do this, my intuition said do that. And now that everything's played out and we have hindsight, that the channel guidance was saying or intuitive guidance was saying made way more sense and was fully accurate. And my logical mind was farting on me. So if you're newer, it's okay to like consult an intuitive friend or double check things somehow or open a reading on. Yeah, no, that wasn't the advice they wanted to give. You trust yourself if you know what your intuition is and what it's saying and how to work with it 100%. Um, as long as it's not like a life, if you're newer and it's not a life threatening thing or something like really important, like maybe go out on a limb and trust your intuition over your logic brain if you're getting a message to do something, but your logic mind is fighting it. Um, And I'm saying that because when you're newer, it can be a little bit different, until you have it honed in and you know what's what and you know what's going on and you know very clearly like what's a message and what's not. And that if you're newer, that can take some practice. I would keep showing up and practicing it. Just like I wouldn't give up on it. Um, but there are going to be some logic leaps where you have to trust your intuition over your logic for those of you who are ready to do so. I'm getting this week. It could be, around this time period whenever you're seeing it, but try to trust your intuition on things like that. And it could be regarding a move is something I'm hearing. Like trust your intuition is what they're saying. So next thing they're trying to get to here, we're kind of I don't usually get well, this is what's showing up. They're showing like a lollipop again, but someone's like ripping it out of someone else's mouth. And the message is like if you have people trying to take things from you, they're not going to be able to, is the message. So hopefully you're not dealing, that's probably not for all of you, but hopefully you're not dealing with that in the first place. If you are, they're not going to be able to take things from you, whatever that's about here. For some of you, that is potentially a home or is something I'm hearing. Maybe that's just like two of you. For others of you, it could be smaller things as well. I wouldn't worry. Some of you could be ideas. Is something I'm hearing as an idea. Something I'm hearing as a message as well. So don't worry too much. One thing they're also talking about is if you're dealing with people stealing ideas or you're dealing with that, sometimes staying on the cutting edge of like creating and moving forward is better than like sobbing over it too much. So like let's say you post a video on the tube, on YouTube or somewhere else, and like someone steals your idea, and maybe they're even like way more successful with it than you, or you're annoyed because people are copying you or something like that. Stay on the cutting edge of creativity and move on to the next video because they won't be able to follow you after a certain point, and people will eventually catch on like, oh, wait, this other person's just copying you. Uh, Or, like, they'll, like, say this thing that's copying you, who, in this example, knows what they're talking about, excuse me, and then, like, beyond what they copied, that person over there doesn't know what they're talking about, so, like, people catch on, I wouldn't worry about it too much, and if you're the one who is, like, the source and the one, like, creating the work and putting it out there and, like, actually being effective and knowing what they're doing, I know I said this, like, 3 times already, but eventually people catch on and, like, you'll probably be the one who wins in the end, as long as you're staying consistent and like don't give up essentially. Next thing they're showing me is ice here and ice melting and like an ice bath. There's like an old white dude in an ice bath. Thanks, angels. Great. Or now it's like Italian. But anyways, let me see what's going on with this one here. Mm. I think like sometimes when the universe cools things off for us in our world, like slows things down or forces us to wait or be patient, like we think it's a bad thing. But if you knew the timing of things, you wouldn't think it was a bad thing. You'd really trust it and learn to trust it and like appreciate it actually. Uh, and like the way they're saying is like, hey, like if things have been too fast, like, maybe it would have been one too many things and it would have like, that would have been the thing that like spun you off your rocker. But by slowing it down, you know, you get to be totally good, you get to rest, you get to be ready for the next steps instead of maybe even like rushing through things or making small mistakes or missing things that you needed to see is something I'm getting with that. Interestingly enough. So next thing they like to get to here, let me see where they're going here. I keep getting this message recently, so it must be going around. But if there has been a lot of destruction for you recently, like that's leaving, like you're not going to be in destruction land forever. And it's also showing you things you need to see is something I'm getting. If there are like tons of destruction or excuse me, things falling through, but they're also showing it. They give me the words like dilapidated structures because like with falling through, they showed me the floor falling through. But it was like for about half of you, like, the things falling apart are more like dilapidated old structures in your life or reality. It's not like actually something that has value is, like, a weird way I'm getting to say it, or something that would in the future, so kinda trust that. And, they're also giving me, like, a weird sentence, like, "Would you rather live in a shack or I guess a house that's going to collapse on you when you're in it, or would you rather be out of the shack or the house and it collapses and you lose it, but you have your life, you have opportunity, you have friends who can support you, et cetera?" And it's like, a very weird, almost extreme example, so it's interesting it showed up that way. But they're trying to kinda say, like, "Hey, think of destruction that way." Like, you're not really losing you, you're losing the things that don't serve, or you're gaining something from it in the long term, usually, is the way they're saying it, which is interesting. So, we already talked about that in a different message, so I'm gonna skip that. So, this is potentially gonna be a weird one, but there was this message that seemed like a bit more of an overarching thing, but we'll see. It was, like, this message about the crumbling of religion, and, like, certain, like, religious ideals are leaving the collective. I need to, like, move this so I can read it better. But it was more like the bad ones, sorry. And I know bad's, like, a weird word sometimes in certain, like, spiritual communities or things like that. One second. Cool. So, where were we going with this one? Oh, yeah. So, there's, like, a religious clearing is the way I'm hearing it, for everybody, and for some of you, this will be deeper than others, but you might have like religious beliefs surfacing and releasing, or you might have to kind of come face to face in a way with like an old version of yourself and be like, oh, wow, I was like that. I used to be, like, not all of you, but some of you might have been like really religious and you have to like kind of like face that down and be like, oh, I used to be like that, or I used to believe that. And now I see how that's not true. And it's like, it's really getting you to move into you. What's the best way to say this? So it might not be that all religion is falling apart or anything like that, but the parts of it that don't serve humanity or that serve to be oppressive or not true, that's crumbling. And you're going to watch that play out over the years ahead, is what I'm getting. And it's not a bad thing. I know some people are very attached to religion or they grew up with it. So it's like their comfort food in life, metaphorically, or it's really distressing to them when they hear anything like this. And I hesitate to say the word they're saying because the word they're saying is, like, tough. I'm like, "Oh, okay." I was gonna take a different angle, but let me see what the best way to say this is. I guess the question is, like, would you rather have what's true, or would you rather have this thing that's comforting but hindering you? Is kind of the way they're selling this idea, I guess, the way I'm hearing to say it. So I guess consider that if you happen to be more leaning towards the religious side. But the things that are not serving regarding religion are having to go is part of a healing of the collective that's really happening right now. So I know some of you used to have more religion in your lives than others. I know like the vast majority of you, like in chat or that I talk to, are not religious. And it's okay if you are and you stumble upon this. I would just sit with what's true, ask God or the universe to show you, and I will trust that the universe will show you what you need to see for you, at the right timing for you and the right pace for you. Next here, where do we go next here? There was this like they give me the word invisible, and the words I'm hearing now are things reappearing. So, one, you might have people from the past reappearing and popping into your life, which might surprise you. And the words they're showing me are like, go away, go away. So, for most of you, you might be like, go away. For others of you, just trust your intuition. Like, is this a great person to have around? Is this really something I should accept back into my life? For most of you, I'd be moving to the new, is what I'm hearing, and not the past. The past is not where it's at. Otherwise, you'd probably still be at the past. And like, sure, there can be things where people from the past really do grow and learn and transform and become someone who's worthy of you, is the way I'm hearing it. And they're supposed to be on your path, but that's not always the case at the same time. So, again, trust your intuition on that. The other message within invisible that came through ahead of time, because that's not what came through ahead of time, is things being revealed. We already kind of talked about this actually in like just earlier messages with this reading. A lot is being revealed. Like even like with the religion thing we just talked about, like that could be a lot of truth being revealed in like a group you're a part of or something like that. That goes like, oh, this is what this is actually about, not what I thought it was about, or things like that. Uh, I would also the words coming through are like, I would be careful about following anyone. I'm gonna have to say this in a certain way, but besides your own intuition when it comes to your like decisions in life, and it's okay if you like supplements or there's someone you can trust that you lean on from time to time, or like you're coming to this, like I'm not necessarily telling you how to live your life. My intention is just to bring through what's highest and best for the highest good, what's going to help you, what's going to be fully accurate, what's going to do what's for the highest good for it to do for you, of course. And but I can't take over your life. Like it's okay if you go really far into videos and things like that. But at this a certain point, you also have to make choices for you, or I can't be there over your shoulder like, "Hey, wipe your butt this way today," like, or say this to this person. But your intuition can, and your spirit guides can. So I would be supplementing. Well, it depends on where you're at and where you are at with your journey. But I would be really leaning into your intuition right now regarding everything, in addition to anything else you're turning to help you, support you, to get help you get clarity with things, etc. And allow your intuition to be your guide, not just another person. If you're at that place to do that. Um, it's going to be important that a certain point that you have your intuition to work to kind of work with, regarding pretty much what anyone's saying is the weird way I'm hearing it. I didn't say that perfectly. What's the best way to say it? It's gonna be important you probably have that honed in eventually, is what I'm hearing, and that you're trusting that. And, not that you already do this, but not just buying everything you're hearing, of course. Because there is so much misinformation out there, so many different opinions, so many different groups, so many different ideas about the world, and at least supplement it with your intuition. If I'm gonna, I feel like I've stated their piece here and my piece with it. So let me see what they'd like to get to next. None of that. Okay. So this is like one of the last things they'd like to get to. They showed me a key. They said doors opening for the highest good. So I do get a lot of opportunity for this crowd, is one of the messages coming through specifically, and it's doors for the highest good, of course. So if you feel like you've had a lot of closed doors, if you're feeling Five of Pentacles, or show me the Five of Pentacles tarot card, which is the one with the two like beggar looking people outside of like a church. Funny enough, with the church that we just talked about. And that's not going to be you, is something I'm getting as far as a phrase. Like, that's not going to be your life. Where one of the phrases certain people use with that card is like left out in the cold. Like you're not going to be left out of the cold, in the cold, or begging for the rest of your life, or like you won't have all the doors slammed shut on you, for all eternity or anything like that. It's actually time for new opportunity to birth, for new ideas to come in that are actually going to work for you, is something I'm getting. It's going to be time for things to actually start to happen, or at least kind of hit that next level and enter through the threshold to your next steps in life. I'm just getting this message like, hey, you've had enough BS. You've been through enough like closed doors and like wrong opportunities, and or things even like right person, wrong time, or things like that. So it's kind of time for things to work. You're going to start seeing it could be one area after another. It could be one thing after another. Like something's going to start working at least, and I would run with it. And once you find like at least one thing that starts working and you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing, like a lot of the times everything can start working, or a lot more things can start working at least. So pay attention to what's working and do more of that. I sounds obvious, but I've heard other people say that, and it's coming through now. So I would trust that here. So they would like to, in their words, we would like to shut down this reading and do something else. So we're going to be closing. It has been like 45 minutes. So um, I hope that so far this has been helpful, resonant to whatever was for your highest good. And to anyone who tuned on TikTok while I was channeling and facilitating that, because I know I don't always look at the screen high. I know it's a different angle, but I'm also on YouTube in front of me. So hi YouTube, hi TikTok people. We're gonna do, or well, I'm gonna facilitate a full channel mode session. So I'm gonna be channeling my spirit guides, the angels, and source fully for the highest good, just to bring through what would be for the highest good to come through in addition to this reading. And there's an energetic component to it. There's also an energetic transmission for the highest good from source that just it can be like an energy healing session, like it does energetic work for the highest good, creates and does shifts and changes for the highest good. It can also open your third eye and intuition and your channeling if you're ready for that, if that's for the highest good to happen, depending on where you're at for all that and how you operate. And those are some of the benefits in addition to just the message that comes through. So that's going to be our next step. I'm going to change, oh, I muted the mic, change positions here because I'm going to like sit differently. So let's try that. So thank you, Brandon. It's been a long time. I haven't hopped on the live, but that's okay. I haven't been on TikTok in a while. I've been on YouTube the past couple weeks. Um, okay, I'll answer this really quickly because they're saying they would like me to answer it, and then we'll move into the full channel. So, As Heaven asks, how would Spirit explain time and hour? How do they view time? So they're explaining they are outside of time. So let me see. I realize that might not make sense to the human mind, but let me see what they'd like to say to explain it here. If you think of everything all existing now and everything existing at the same time, all of it, that's how they view time. It's all just a big thing that exists. And, like, I remember the first time, like, earlier on in my journey, I would read or see people being like, "It's all now. It's all now. It's all just now." I'd be like, "What does that mean? What does that mean?" And, I didn't do it as sassy as that, but I guess I'm doing it sassy for the video. And I remember, like, asking, and then they, like, boom, they, like, put me into, they just gave me a really intuitive visual, and I got the really strong knowing, like, channeled, claircognizant knowing, like, "Oh, it is all now." And they showed me this, like, interesting, like, I it's really not an easy thing to put into words what they showed me, but it was, like, this dimensional thing, and, if you think of, like, some people talk about, like, "Oh, the 4th dimension is time," and then if you come out zoom out, it's, like, almost like this worm thing of everywhere you've been. It's just a long thing that exists at which might not be totally 100% it, but it was something like this almost tube, but there were other things. Yeah, sorry. I don't think I should even waste time trying to put it into words, but then I got the knowing like, oh, it is all now. So that's it. I'm not sure if that might cause more questions than answers, honestly, but that's the way they're um, answering it. Yeah, no, totally. And if you think of it energetically, it might make sense to like one thing that I've done with people in the past, and I used to do this way more, just like with people I met more so than I do it on like a video or on TikTok, is it'd be like you can step outside of time energetically. And if you'd like to do that, just be like, okay, source, please step me out of time now. Or like I asked to step outside of time now. But before you do that, which you probably already did that, pay attention to your surroundings energetically and what it's like, and just take a second and then ask. And you should feel it's almost like a layer falls away, or just something like shifts, and it'll feel a lot more like probably spacious, or it'll just have a particular energy to it all around you. And so I would try that. Um, I'll just do an exercise with you really quickly. So if you haven't already tried it, take a second to just kind of sit and just kind of put your energetic awareness on the space around you, just your experience and just what's going on. So, and you can just say yes if you agree to receiving this, but I'm just going to ask that fully for thy highest good and true highest and best limited source make this happen. And the angels can contribute if it's for thy highest good too. I ask that I and the people listening to this or watching this, that agree to this and that it would be nice good for this to happen or stepped outside of time now. So some of you didn't step out of it, but you should notice like a bit more of a peace or like a stillness energetically, or it just should just feel different in some way. Um, and you'll kind of notice a bit of what it's like to be timeless. And, as far as this way of it going on, like you might still notice seconds on the clock and things like that. But on like what I'm hearing is on another level above all that, like there's just, it all exists. So I know it's weird, but um, It for in this instance, it's energetic to step outside of time. It's like an energetic exercise, and you'll kinda be living in a different energy. Ooh, that's how I feel when I know I'm tuned in. Yes, exactly. I could see that. Oop, sorry, I'm trying to scroll on TikTok. Really peaceful and connected me into a very, very peaceful energy too. It was very beautiful. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Um I had a vision of everything I did or will do in this room happening at the same time. Exactly. That's it, is what they're saying. Um, and they're like, hey, there can be a little bit of nuance to it. It might be a little bit hard to grasp by the human mind, but that's spot on. That's as heaven. So cool. I felt lighter in my heart center for a few seconds. Yeah, that's the start of you feeling it 100%. But that's it. Is it possible to create an abundance of time so that we experience more time passing by in a day? What I'm hearing is like, yes, however, you have to be very practiced. I've met people who talk about bending time and working with that. I'm hearing I have done that when I haven't been realizing it. I know people who did it very, I guess you could say concretely, where it's like, oh, they needed to drive like a long drive and they did like like a 45-minute, 50-minute drive in like 20 minutes or like 15 minutes. And for them, I think they had a particular technique they used. I never, for me yet, as far as like consciously being like, okay, I asked for time to bend for this car drive. Personally, I haven't had that experience yet that I recognized, if that makes sense. But so yes, it is possible, but according to what I'm getting right now, it takes practice. So I hope that helps and answers that, or is at least interesting to. And for anyone on YouTube who's wondering where that chat's coming from, I'm also like on TikTok here live. I didn't turn all my chat on YouTube, so I apologize if you've been talking to me on YouTube and I haven't said anything. Everything all at once, yeah. Hey, everybody on YouTube. Sorry. I hope you're doing great. Um, okay. So, what I'll answer this, and if we're supposed to do full channel mode, I'll do that. Molly's asking on TikTok, what do you think about tarot cards versus just using your own intuition? The way I'm hearing to say it is I think they're both great tools, and they're both in some ways kind of the same thing in a sense. If you're doing the tarot intuitively, I'm not gonna say that perfectly. What's the best way to I'm gonna see what they'd like to say about it. Tarot is a great tool to access your intuition, and it's a great way to kickstart your intuition, and the way I've heard some people say it is, like, open an intuitive field, and some people do really great with cards, and that's the best way for them to work, for now at least. For me, I prefer not to use the cards and to stay practiced with that and to channel, and that works really well for me. And for me, that's very accessible in my daily life because it's like if my girlfriend asks like, "Hey, should we do this or this?" And I just get that, "Oh, do the second one," then we just, it's right there. It's really helpful. Or if I'm like, "Oh, I have this choice between three things, what do I do?" And then just like do the second one. Like, okay, cool, do the second, or or whichever, first, second, third, or maybe they're like, do something else entirely. um, and I like to stay practiced with that. So another thing I could talk about with tarot versus just working with your intuition. Oh, hey, so that's probably why we didn't do the full channel mode yet. So there's this thing that happens on TikTok where they're like, "Are you still here? Solve this puzzle and let us know." But if I if I do full channel mode, I don't always catch it because my eyes are closed and I'm channeling. Then like the live will just cut off if I don't solve that puzzle. So now we don't have to worry about that. Um, but we were talking about cards. And I think it depends on how you use the cards as well, but where should we go here? What's the best thing for me to say for this crowd today on this? Mm, yeah, like I said, the cards can be a way to access your intuition. They don't have to be the only way. It can be a great way to kickstart it. One reader I met uh, also talked about like your physical tool. So if you think of a card deck like a tool to help you access your intuition, can mirror what she would call your etheric tools. So it's a little bit maybe interesting to try and describe like as a crash course really quickly here. But maybe you have a particular way to work with intuition. And like when you work with the cards, it allows you to access that tool etherically to work with your intuition and it makes it easier. So my shortcut is an intention where you ask to be able to access all your etheric tools with or without the physical tools with ease, and then you'll have access to all of it if you know what you're doing at least with the manifesting and intention settings. So uh, you could consider that perspective where your physical tools, like a card deck, are a way to help you access your etheric tools. Is another idea for you. So I'm not against cards; it's not my preference, and once you get your intuition honed in, you really don't need them. And by the way, if you're like a tarot reader and you feel like you do need the cards right now, I'm not trying to like say you're worse than other people who don't use cards. I'm not trying to be like that. I'm just I'm just saying what I'm hearing to say right now. There's nothing wrong with using the cards as long as it works for you. So do what works, I guess is the one of the good ways to look at it. Thank you, that makes sense. I think things get clouded with tarot sometimes. I hear ya, and it really what I'm hearing is, like, it really depends on the reader too, and, like, are they, like, reading the cards intuitively and just saying, like, what's coming through channeled and intuitive wise, or are they, like, leaning too much into the card meaning? And nothing I was gonna say nothing wrong with either. I would say, like, in my experience and from what I've seen with people, the people who are actually connected and reading with intuition, regardless of what the traditional card meaning is, are the ones that are accurate and the most helpful to listen to, in my experience. And, the card meanings are great, especially if you're newer and you're like, "Eh." Like, it can be really magical to, like, pull an oracle card. You're like, "I don't know what this means." And then you read the meaning in the book. You're like, "Oh, that's exactly what I'm going through." Like, that can be really great. And at the same time, once you get your intuition honed in, you're just gonna be doing it intuitively anyways, regardless of what the card says. The card will just kinda help with that. Um, so would it be for that good to answer more questions in chat? And, if you're on YouTube asking questions, I'm sorry, it's, like, not showing me the messages. Uh, so I was gonna ask them, so questions with chat or full channel right now? I might do, like, one more question if something shows up here. Excuse me. Um, what's going on here? I wanna see if I missed something on the chat. I have to awkwardly scroll because of the, other device here in my way. Um, uh, so S Heaven says, how are galaxies viewed by spirits?" Um, so that's an interesting question here. Do they want to answer that here? They're like, "Well, it looks pretty similar to us. We just see it at a different dimension," or like, like everything is now or something like that. Um, it's interesting because like the way they say it is like, they kind of just are what they are. There's nothing all that crazy about it. Or like the human mind is like, "Well, it's so cool with all this stuff." And they're like, "Yeah." You were asking like if they're connected to source. What I'm hearing is not any more than any other matter is the if that makes sense. And it's kind of and to me, like source is everything. So source can everything's connected to source in a sense. Um, because like source kind of makes up everything in a way, is a way you could look at it. And so I realize that's not a great answer. I was really on the fence about answering that question. So I apologize. I don't have more for you on that and like maybe the ways you meant it. Um, But sometimes with, like, the space stuff, I know, like, we as humans can be, like, really, really like, "Oh, the black hole, that's so cool," and then they're just like, "Yeah, it's not actually as crazy as you think it is." Like, all this, like, wormhole stuff, like, that's not um, exactly what it is. You know, like, there's things like that where we get very fantastical in the human mind, but then they're like, it's not exactly that." So, I don't know. But then there are other things that there are really fantastical things, when you look at it from the source. What I get is that there's just one source, by the way. There's not like multiple sources. That's what I get. Okay, so we're gonna start the full channel mode session if it's for the highest good, but they keep having me look at chat. So all right, so someone was asking, what does it mean to see a shooting star while channeling? One, that could be it could be different for different people because, but what I was hearing is like that's confirmation. If you're channeling and then you see a shooting star, that's like confirmation. For me, shooting stars often signify wish fulfillment as well. I don't get that was necessarily what it was supposed to like signify for you with that. And that kinda gets into, like, well, the signs can mean different things to different people, at different times that they see it. So, like, a shooting star for me, I could look up and see a shooting star. I'm like, "Oh, I just asked for this thing," and I look up and a shooting star, like, "Oh, cool, that wish is gonna come true," or something like that, and someone else might see it, and it's, like, confirmation, like, "Hey, yeah, you're magic, you're channeling. This is legit," or something like that. So, it kinda gets into that dance, but that's what I was hearing right away, which is a really brief answer, but confirmation. There might be more to it that comes to light later on as far as what the sign meant as well, too. Like, the words I'm also hearing are magic, for you, and that's all they wanna say, actually, so I'm gonna stop there. I won't force it. You're welcome, I hope that helped. So now we're gonna start the full channel, finally, which I don't mind channeling on some questions. Um, so let's go into what as far as, like, a usually they'll give me a theme. I kinda already talked about the benefits of full channel mode before we got into those questions. So they'll be in the description if you're watching this on YouTube, after it's live, and you can look there if you're just catching this part. But let me see. One of the main themes right now, which is not a surprise to me, is transformation. I feel like they talk about that a lot. I know that was talked about last week, I would like to say, but maybe they'll have a different angle or just some different area they'd like to go into completely. And they'd like to talk about more about collective shifts and things like that. So let's see what they'd like to bring through today. Fully that's good. And for anyone who needs to know, I'm channeling my spirit guides, the angels and source. And if you need a name, they go by the Angelic Collective of Zorbidal. Uh, so that's the name that they go by. If not that they have names, because they're like, we don't really have names up here, but then they gave me that name just so there was a name, I guess. So here we go. Rapid transformation for this crowd, rapid shifts, and you may feel energies along your spine or from the bottom of the spine up. From your root chakra to the crown and above to the etheric chakras, change is rattling your worlds energetically. You may or may not see all the physical components of this shift right away for all of you in this crowd. You may simply feel the energies for a while before anything births in the physical at all, but you are feeling the shift. And this crowd is a crux point, a node, if you will, for the overall collective. Each of you has a specific energy flavor you bring that impacts the whole. And as this node or this collective within the collective, you could say, shifts and becomes what they are meant to be and evolves into higher consciousness, that too cascades then out to the rest of the world. So when you are going through rapid shifts, you are actually transforming for all, just as some basic information to hand to you right now. Some of you question this and think the difficult experiences you go through don't mean anything. And sure, you don't always have to go through them at a certain point later on in your evolution, but that is a different topic entirely. What if that difficult transformation you went through is actually transforming everything? What if it actually serves a purpose? And it is. So, we are not saying you have to go through difficult transformations and shifts to serve the collective. We are not saying that is your role or only role. We are just giving you perspective to some of the difficulties of late, some of the difficulties you see in the world, and especially to some of the ways you are forced to transform through your experiences right now. And some of you have more ease with that than others based on your previous journey, based on what you've experienced before, and based on what you are ready for. And Source is not going to take you to more than you can handle. So bear that in mind when we talk about rapid shifts and transformations, or even about topics like losing things in the readings. Some of your minds go to the worst case scenario. However, you might be losing the dud in your life or the metaphorical lemon in your life that was holding everything back. So the loss or the thing you must walk away from could be something you actually celebrate leaving or celebrate losing at the end of the day, especially with the higher perspective and the grander perspective, and especially with hindsight. That or higher perspective, and those can be very similar. We are not saying we are always looking at from the future back at the past, but the higher perspective is going to give you the accurate information that is similar to that hindsight is 2020 type of deal that many of you humans speak of in your quotes and quotations. So trust the process through any rapid shifts. Trust that it's all working out for the highest good. And we will remind you to ask for ease if and when things get intense for you. For you may think you are helpless and powerless in your journey, in the directions you go, in what shows up for you, but you can set intentions that you are able to move through certain healings or transformations at an easier pace or in a way that works more smoothly for you. Some of you think you are at the whim of the universe and you just have to take what is handed to you. That is partially true, depending on soul missions you signed up for, even depending on things you manifested or asked for. And some of the things showing up, some of the changes are actually ways the universe is getting you to what you asked for. And some of you might judge some of those shifts as bad right away if you did not take the higher perspective that this might be leading you to your manifestation. So, for example, a job loss. One may lose a job and go into panic mode, rightfully so, for your survival can sometimes be based on an income. At the same time, there are many ways the universe could get you the money in the meantime, or your family could take care of you, or a friend or a benevolent donor could help you in some way, shape, or form. So don't discount the other ways the universe could work. But perhaps you had wished for, in the previous 6 months, the start of a business or a job that made you more money. And the only way you were going to get there was if spirit cut you away from the alleged safety line. Now, if spirit makes the move for you, this does not mean don't take action to help yourself or benefit yourself in addition to what spirit's doing. Spirit has a plan. For if spirit cuts the safety line, you actually have 12 more attached to your life raft or your swimming suits or your life jackets, whatever you'd like to use in this metaphor, that are keeping you safe and afloat. You are never actually at a loss, we would say. So again, you might lose that job, but the other safety line of your mom calls and offers you money, and the other safety line of your friend calls and offers you a place to stay until you get back on your feet, etc. But then the opportunity for the job you asked for shows up, or the business shows up. And perhaps there are still stepping stones or steps to get to the end result of what you asked for. You might get a temporary job, but it's better than the last one. And from there, you build your business on the side, but the schedule allows for it. And maybe your previous job, the schedule or the stress did not allow for that kind of space in your mind or in your capabilities to build that business on the side. So the universe can work in those ways with some of the rapid shifts and transformations, but the universe has your back. So when it comes to some of those events or rapid shifts where you feel a bit more helpless, by all means ask the universe, what are you doing with this? And not in a condescending or angry, "What are you doing?" but more in a, "Hey, what are you doing with this? What might you be leading me towards?" Where there can be mystery in some of these events. And some of them won't make sense to your logical mind or human minds until 50 years later. Some of your more devastating things might not make sense to until 20 years later or later. And we say 50 because some of you do not know how your life is going to play out. 50 years is not even in your mind frame. You're not thinking 50 years ahead. If you are, you might not be looking at the present. And it's okay to occasionally look 50 years ahead or wonder or ask about 50 years ahead. But eventually, you do have to come back to where you are now to get to the optimal 50 years ahead and paying attention to what's in front of you, in addition to the messages you get about the future or even your past, if you're trying to make adjustments or gain clarity. So try not to think you have it all figured out right now when you find yourself judging a rapid shift. That's our main message for this crowd right now. Where we spoke of whirlwinds, we've had many messages reference tornadoes for destruction or rapid changes. And many of you are going through that or have gone through that. And some of you will go through that. But with these messages, you may be able to weather the storm with a bit more grace. Brandon could give you examples of losing a home or a place to live, but the next place pops up out of nowhere or within days or right away. Or in areas that might have seemed more worrisome regarding not having a home, it was actually taken care of the whole time. He just had to ask the right people or communicate in the right ways. Such as ask the landlord, "Oh, do you have another place for me?" "Oh, yes, we do." "Oh, that was taken care of the whole time. No need to stress." And many of you are like that. If you ask the right questions, you won't need to stress. So, we understand the shifts can be worrisome. We understand the shifts can appear scary. But if you will look at the energy underneath, if you will look at the higher perspective or ask for it, if you will look for where it is headed, you will find joy. Not necessarily if you're grieving, if it is a more traumatic loss, but for the things that aren't so traumatic, you may find joy, or at least more ease. And at the end of the day, joy is one of the things you came here for. You did not come here to suffer. And that might seem like a bold statement on this planet Earth, but you did not. Some of you came here to heal suffering, not necessarily by taking it on, by the way, but through finding different ways after the suffering to help with those topics or to help others by finding different possibilities. You came here for joy, you came here for peace, you came here for love, as trite as that might sound. And you came here to bring the shift you were meant to bring, in addition to just enjoying your life. In addition to enjoying your life. So, as much as you can enjoy your life, with balance, please do. This does not mean throw everyone else under the bus at all. But how can you fulfill some of the things you feel called to do to help the world, perhaps, if that's you, and also live in joy? For your frequency that you live in sets an example for the rest. That's an important and key point for what you do here. What frequency do you live from? And that could be part of the transformation of a client of yours as much as a healing session, a channeling session, a reading. What frequency do you operate from? For if you are operating in joy and have happiness and space, that will be a learning for your client as much as the healing or clarity gained through the words you speak or the energies you bring to the session in a different sense. So do not discount your personal vibration as a method and avenue to transform the collective and fulfill your purpose. You may already be bringing it, even just being here right now at a soul level, being you and holding your vibration. Many of you could go higher, and this is not a call down. Many on the planet have been trained into low frequencies, and we are not even saying you are low frequency. We are just saying you can go higher yet. Just to open that possibility and let you know that's there, no matter how high you've already come with your frequency and your work on you. But some of you are already bringing the flavors you are meant to bring and the shifts you are meant to bring. So thank you for being here. We are going to close it there. This has been a bit about jogging your memory, about why you came energetically, by the way. And this was also meant to get you to question, where is this leading? Where will this bring me? And to help you get out of fear regarding change. For change will be the name of the game for a while yet. You won't get out of this one regarding change, but that is not a bad thing. So, we wish you well. We wish you peace and joy. We wish you a beautiful life. And we will see you in the future, many of you, in a future channel. Take care on earth and live to the best of your ability the life you're meant to live. Enjoy. Farewell. Okay, so that's the channel that they brought through. You're welcome, Kara. You're welcome, Augustina. If you're looking on YouTube, can you show me the chat? There you are. Doesn't look like it got too many new messages. That's okay. Will this be on YouTube later? Yes. And sorry, I was reading. I'm like, I thought you were a username that I recognized, and then I was like, I'm not sure if you were. But yes, it'll be on YouTube. I'm actually live on YouTube now and on TikTok at the same time. So that'll be available pretty soon after we're done here on YouTube, just ready to go. You're welcome, Yuki. You're welcome, Brits. Ooh. Yeah, Molly's saying they're tired of shift after shift. Just gotta keep having the faith it's for that greater good. Yes, and maybe ask for more ease with it too, or see if that's what's possible for you regarding that. If you ask for more ease, or ask like, "Hey, universe, can you bring me more ease with these shifts for the highest good? Thanks so much." And sometimes you get to a place, where the shifts are just easier to handle. Where you're just kind of like, okay, cool, we're shifting, and kind of go through the process here, depending on the type of shift here. Okay, so it's been awesome getting to channel for you guys and hang out with you guys. I hope this has been helpful and resonant and just has done whatever's for the highest good so far. And if you ever like to go further with my work, my website is in my link in bio. I know those are the forbidden words on social media. Oh, the link in bio. Vampire hiss. Stay away. But my gosh. That's the algorithm hissing at me when I say link in bio. Not that the algorithm, not, I don't know. Sorry, I said vampire, and that probably brought up some weird thoughts and ideas. So sorry about that. But, anyways, free newsletter. Right now, I'm doing channel advice on the week ahead, channel messages in the month ahead on that. And I also have a membership with long full channel mode sessions and a lot of other content, as well as like a Q and channel A that we do every month. So lots of stuff there. And you have a lot of old content. So if that calls to you, it'd be awesome to see you there. And I also don't have any slots open for next month yet, but I do facilitate one-on-one channel and intuitive readings. And I have a channeling class coming up. So intro to channeling once again at the end of next month, I'd like to say. And there'll probably be some more other classes available soon too for like energy healing and stuff like that. So that's all I've got for what's going on there for now. I'm sure there's more that I'm forgetting to talk about, but it's all there somewhere if you go to my website if you're interested. So it's been awesome hanging out for you guys. You're welcome, Olivia Lee. I hope you guys have a great night and week ahead, and I'll let you know about next week for this with the live. And I'm getting to close it, so you guys take care, okay? And I'm gonna close YouTube first because that's the one that I need to figure out how to close here.